So awkwardly enough, I don't have my tripod with me and I could find nowhere logical or reasonable to prop my phone up. So I'm going to hold it and try to keep my hand as steady as possible. But I thought I would pop in here while I'm still on my vacation at my parents' house and show you a few of the books that I've picked up while I've been here. These ones are ones that I got yesterday from the KW used bookshop, and I bought them with store credit that I had gotten from trading in some old books that I had left here at my parents' house that I knew I no longer wanted to keep. So I'm going to start with the one that I actually read yesterday, and I really enjoyed it. And that's The Necromancer by Robert Holdstock. I was not familiar with this one, but it was really quite an exciting read. Now this is a horror novel. It is about a kind of cursed, mysterious baptismal font. When this woman, her name is June, when her son Adrian was very young, probably only a few days, a few weeks old, that's when baptisms usually happen, the priest dropped her son and he banged his head on the edge of this baptismal font and essentially was mentally damaged and has become mentally handicapped. But June believes that this accident caused her son's soul to exit his body and become trapped within this font, within this stone. Lee comes onto the scene. He is a historian who was kind of lured to this spot by something or someone that he doesn't know, by a fragment of the stone that showed up at his office and intrigued him. Lee comes in and realizes that this stone was probably on the site long before the church was built, and may in fact have something far darker hidden within it, or trapped within it, or imprisoned within it, than simply the soul of this woman's son. He looks around a bit, gets a little creeped out, and he believes that this necromancer he has been corresponding with might be able to help them and might be able to help this woman June get her son back. And it was quite thrilling to read. The author does a great job of building up that suspense. It's funny as well. My one criticism, I think, is that a lot of the characters seem to go from 0 to 100 in terms of their anger, their frustration, very quickly. With one character, you can kind of swallow that, but when multiple characters have that very similar personality, it's a little bit unbelievable to read. Not that a story about a demon trapped within a stone is believable, but you know. The other thing that kind of annoyed me a little bit about this novel was the kind of our main character Lee, his continued disbelief. Even though he was seeing and experiencing, he was the kind of character who kept trying to rationalize things within the realm of science or within the realm of what he knew or believed. He kept trying to push the idea of gods and demons to the side, so to speak. But overall, I greatly enjoyed it, and it kept me up late last night reading it. Then I picked myself up Stephen King's 4 Past Midnight. I've actually read this before. The title story, 1 Past Midnight, is very good. It's about a group of passengers on a plane who fall asleep and wake up to discover that everyone has disappeared, including the pilots. And there's some other great stories in here as well, which is why it's called 4 Past Midnight, because there's 4 of them. So I read that. And then, well, yeah, I've read that. And then I also picked up another Stephen King, The Dark Half. I actually don't know what this one is about, because it's one of those paperbacks where they talk about Stephen King as the author and provide a quote by the New York Times book review on the back instead of a proper synopsis. But I always like Stephen King, so I grabbed it. Now, the next one I want to show you is The Gem. and it came wrapped up in plastic. I'm just going to leave it in there for now. But this is a Teresa Torres novel. Now, she is the author of the quite famous pulp novel Women's Barracks, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I liked it well enough, and I'm very interested in checking out other stuff by her, so I had to jump at this when I saw that it was $5. It's called Not Yet, and it is about 4 women and their kind of growth into womanhood, and it says the hectic years of the war and the men who helped them. And I'm not sure, but I think one of these women has an affair with a student, so that would indicate perhaps a lesbian relationship in here. We'll see what I'm getting. I've not heard of this one, but I was excited to come across it. And I believe this paperback is from the 1950s. Then I grabbed myself a Mae West novel as well. It's called Diamond Lil. The Come Up and See Me Sometime Queen of New York's Underworld. I was taken in by the cover here. Once again, no real synopsis here. Just something on the back here. There's a little bit on this first page here, but it doesn't tell you much about the plot. It just tells you that she is a scarlet woman. I always love these old paperbacks. And I ended up getting a Margaret Atwood novel as well called Bodily Harm. I think I prefer Margaret Atwood's earlier novels, and I definitely love a good paperback like this. If you've read this one, let me know how it is. It appears to be about a woman who goes to the Caribbean to recuperate on a tiny island and is confronted by a world where her rules for survival no longer apply. Comic, satire, relentless, terrifying. Doesn't tell me a whole lot about it, but when it comes to Margaret Atwood's novels, I find I don't really need to know much about it to enjoy it. I've read her novel Surfacing, I've read The Edible Woman, I've read Lady Oracle, and a bit of her poetry as well. And I picked up a couple by Emile Zola. I've gotten into him lately, even though I find him quite ridiculous. He's over dramatic. His novels read like soap operas. I read one the other day where there were like 3 murders and a train crash and everybody was dead. But I picked up Nan or Nana in this pretty pink hardcover edition. Because there's no dust jacket, I can't really tell you what it's about, but World Publishing Company, nice old hardcover here. And then I also picked up Germinal or Germinal. Never heard of this one too much either. Zola is an author I'm just starting to get into. If you've read Zola, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you find him as kind of overdramatic as I do? Does he seem like you're reading a soap opera? Maybe it's just because I compare him to other French authors of the same era that I've read. Germinal was written by Zola to draw attention once again to the misery prevailing among the poor in France during the Second Empire. The novel, which has now become a sociological document, depicts the grim struggle between capital and labor in a coalified northern France. It's funny because even though I find his novels kind of overdramatic, I still enjoy them. They're not something I would read again, but they're kind of light and ridiculous reads. So those are the books that I picked up at the KW bookstore yesterday. I do have a few more that I picked up in Endicott, New York, but I'll perhaps show those off to you in a separate video that I'll likely film when I get back to Ottawa next week. So I hope you all had a great Christmas if you celebrate, and a Happy New Year. And I will see you sometime next week when I am back to Ottawa, back to work, and back to the real world.